Tell us a little bit about Go Overseas, what your product is, what it does.
Sure. Yeah, I'm just a step away from the Reid Hoffman level at this point, but I'm comfortable with that. So Go Overseas. So we're our brief pitch of what we are. We're basically like a Yelp TripAdvisor for programs abroad. So we list every program in the world with ratings and reviews. That's study abroad programs, volunteer abroad programs, internships, gap year programs, adventure travel. And our whole goal is to help people make more informed, educated decisions when they're choosing between programs. There's just a ton out there, as anyone who's searched for any of those programs is probably nodding along with me right now. So our idea is to give better information and help people make better choices and ultimately encourage more people to go and participate in meaningful programs abroad because we think that makes a big difference.
And how long have you been working on Go Overseas?
From like the idea phase in the shower till now, I'll go with 3 years.
Okay.
But we launched about a little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago.
Sure, and tell me about that process. Like, what was the getting started process like for you?
It's always tough. I mean, we've pivoted and gone in a whole bunch of different directions and experimented in so many different ways, and that's been part of the stress and the joy of starting a company. So I mean, when you first start, I really believe in the Eric Ries lean startup model, and we use that all the time. Build, learn, iterate, and we've made a lot of changes along the way, and it's been a lot of fun. There've been some ups and downs. There's days where you feel like it's just not going to work, and thankfully, I think we're transitioning from startup into real company mode, and that's a much better place to be.
Fantastic. Now, part of why we have people like yourself on is we want to encourage our audience to pursue their dreams and take risks and try new things, but eyes wide open. Like, it is not an easy path. 90% of the startups in the Valley don't make it. And what's the worst day for you? Like, what's the worst day been during your process? Like, we want people to be aware that this is not easy.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, I'd say the worst day for us came when we were hit by a Google algorithm update out of nowhere last year, and we figured it out and got beyond it. But I didn't.
This was the Penguin update.
Yeah, questionable whether it was Panda or Penguin. Google, if you want to tell us, I'm happy to listen which one it was. But we're not exactly sure. Either way, it affected our traffic a lot overnight. And thankfully, we had a great user base and community already anyway, and that helped us. But when your traffic takes a big dip, everyone relies on Google to some degree. And that was an extremely stressful moment, and we weren't sure we would be able to continue. And
so there was your business was going along. You were sort of climbing up, good progress. And then there was an update that Google did, a technological update that cut your traffic in half or a third overnight.
Yeah, something like that.
And that sort of imperils the future of your business.
Absolutely, and it affects you in so many different ways. I mean, clients notice, that's a problem. It affects employee morale. When you're at a small company with 10 people, which is what we are right now, 10 great people, if you're listening. So that affects employee morale. It affects your morale, and you have to find a way to fight through that and keep people working hard and let them know that we're going to get through this and it's going to be okay. But to your original point too, for entrepreneurs out there who are thinking about doing it, I think it always takes longer than you think. It always takes longer than you think. The few exceptions out there, like the Instagrams, give people the false hope that it's going to be a quick turnaround and you're going to make a lot of money and be a success overnight. And the reality is that it takes 3 to 5 years for almost every successful business to truly make it.
Yeah, and let's talk about what does success mean? Because the glitz and the glamour are the Instagram stories, the YouTubes, the Facebooks, the Zuckerberg and that sort of thing. But the reality is that that's not really the case for most businesses. Like, how do you think about what success is for your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, for me, success is 2 things. I mean, first of all, you want to have the monetary success. That's a big part of it, right? But for me, more important is getting up every day and really being passionate about what I'm doing, working with people that I really enjoy, feeling like I'm doing something creative and fun and interesting that makes a difference in people's lives. So to me, it's some combination of that formula, and I'm a big believer in that.
Of money and meaning.
Yeah, exactly. That's a more concise way to put it.
Sure.
Than I did. But I think one thing I really believe strongly in is that if you're just doing it for the money, it's likely not to work.
Yeah.
Or the odds are more stacked against you. You have to really love it because you're going to be doing it 80, 100 hours a week, and you have to love that.
Yeah, and the Go Overseas thing really makes sense in terms of your life experience and narrative. Like, living abroad was really, really important to you, correct?
Yeah.
And maybe you can tell a little bit about how that informed your passion and then your experience with that overseas market kind of informed the product that you eventually came up with.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, it's one of those examples where you make one choice in life and you have no idea how it's going to have this domino effect on the rest of your life. And that happened to me. I studied abroad in Taiwan for a year and then ended up starting my first company there and lived there for 5 years.
And that company was?
Reach to Teach.
Okay.
Education-based recruitment company.
Sure.
In Asia. And so from there, I was very involved in kind of the international education field, which is really important to me. Felt passionately about the global exchange and globalization, which is obviously affecting everyone, and the idea of meaningful travel, not just going to hang out at a beach for a week. Not that there's anything wrong with that, I do that too.
Right.
But if you're able to really interact with the local community through study abroad and volunteer abroad programs.
And contribute to a local community.
Absolutely, right. Yeah. We learn from each other. I learn more from the countries I've been to than I think they've learned from me. So yeah, that's been really important to me, and I think living that and immersing myself in that, and then also having an entrepreneurial frame of mind was a good combination. I think if you focus on a particular area and you are creative and have good ideas, then it's a good mix, hopefully.
Sure. And tell me about how you have educated yourself through the process of starting kind of multiple businesses, and what how you keep sharpening your skills on a kind of a daily basis.
That's such a tough question because, to be honest, I probably don't do as good a job of that as I should. I mean, when you're just in it every day, sometimes it's really, really hard to see the forest for the trees. But I think I've been reading a little bit lately about the transition from being a small 3 to 5 person team to then growing to a 10 to 20 person team. And I think there really is, successful founders have a mental shift there where you have to find ways to continue to keep the company growing without you being involved in every sale and every little thing that happens in the company every day. And so that's something I'm really trying to do. Professional development, reading things a lot, trying to keep myself reading books and the new things that are coming out for online marketing, things like that, which is a constant challenge that I'm probably failing at, but I try on a regular basis.
Sure. Well, let's talk about your team. So
Sure.
we're friends at a personal level outside of business, and
that was a little presumptuous, but okay.
Okay. But you've over and over again talked about your team and how important they are to you. Yeah. How do you go about recruiting great people as a startup owner? How do you go about retaining great people? Talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's by far the most important thing. And my co-founders, Andrew and Tucker, have been, the company would not exist without them in the way that it does. And our key employees, Nadia and Megan and people like that, have just been amazing in our growth. It's hard to find good people. And we've had fits that didn't happen either. To me, the lessons that I've learned are that you have to find someone who really believes in what you're doing. And then on my end, as a founder, you should be so generous that it hurts. And by that I mean with equity, and they really have to feel, I think, that you genuinely care, because
Right.
It's not a 9-to-5 job, and if they treat it like a 9-to-5 job, that's not a good thing for the company. So you have to reflexively also show them that you care more than someone in a 9-to-5 job would care about their employees.
Sure. And so that's both on an equity basis, meaning they have shares and options in the company. Yep. What about in terms of like workload and ownership? Like you talked about how removing yourself from the day-to-day decision making is difficult. How do you think about that as for your relationships with the individual employees?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that I give people as much responsibility as they're willing to take.
Sure.
And I recognize that for them that can be stressful too, because they're given a lot more responsibility than they would have in another company. And so I think my job is to support them in every way that I can and block and tackle some of the little stuff so they can focus on what's really important in their job. And then also I think that they need to know and really believe, and this is true in my case definitely, that I really care about their professional development. And hopefully that's at our company go overseas for a very long time. But even if they leave, that they know that they're going to have an ally and a supporter in me forever.
Right. Well, and that's sort of dovetails on a theme that Reed and Ben were talking about, which is this. There are a variety of different ways to train yourself and to find opportunity. And sort of one of the trade-offs that you make going to a startup, which I've done a couple times in my career now, is you may not have the same pay rate that you would get going to a large established company, but the opportunity to learn and grow and do things that you otherwise wouldn't have the opportunity to, in the long term, can outweigh the short-term financial gains. I don't know if that is actually phrased in the form of a question, but like, how do you think about that? And like, what do you think about that?
No, I completely agree. I mean, it might be taking a little bit of a step back salary-wise in the beginning at a startup, but it means that you'll move forward at a much more rapid pace in your career. I think that's exactly what you meant. I completely agree.
Yeah, and so for a personal story, like I did that, I was in New York working in advertising, producing TV commercials, and I saw that the internet was rising rapidly and that the TV world was kind of stagnating and flattening. And so I took a pay cut to go work at a online production startup building websites for brands and stuff. And I basically flamed out in a matter of months. It was not the right fit for me personally, and though I wasn't fired, it was pretty close. But during that 4 months, so I roll out of this and I'm like, oh, I took a pay cut, I failed, it was awful. During those 4 months, I gained an incredible amount of skills that allowed me to actually get to the West Coast for my next job, which happened to be Google, and then that has been a radical turnaround for me. So I got very, very lucky, but if you don't, I looked for a growth opportunity, a learning opportunity, and I paid for it by taking a lower salary instead of going to school.
And the end of that story is that you're sitting here now, right? Running a great company, a great startup, and
I'm the luckiest guy I know. That this literally creativeLIVE is my dream job. I get to sit here and learn from great people and talk to great people like yourself, and constantly grow my skills every day and help other people grow their skills. Do we have any questions from folks in the room for Mitch, who is in it every day? Yes. There's a little microphone action there.
So I have a startup, but how do you think about equity in your first employees?
Great question.
So I'll keep it general here, but I'm more than happy to talk offline too about specifics. But my philosophy is be so generous that it hurts. So if I'm putting together an equity package for someone, my initial instinct, then I'll push myself a little further, because I think startups, it's all a dream, right? It's all an idea. It's not really worth anything. We really get into cap tables and all this kind of stuff. But it's only if it really works. And so for me, I want my employees to have the exact same incentives and motivations that I do, which is to create a big, successful company, both on a personal level and monetary level, right? And so I want those incentives to be aligned, and to me that means giving them a generous equity pool. And even if that means me taking a little bit of a hit, but creating a bigger pie, that I think that's okay. But it surprises me actually how many people don't do that.
Sorry.
Yeah,
follow-up question.
Follow-up. A little closer to that.
How do your investors take that?
So we're actually, and this is a topic we can dive into a little bit more. So we're more bootstrapped. I was lucky to have had a first company before this, though. So I was able to invest myself and a little bit of friends and family. So it's both a positive and a negative that we don't have to answer to investors. Yeah.
And actually, so if I'm going to put you on the, feel free not to answer this question, but so the advice for folks maybe breaking into a startup as an employee as opposed to a founder, right. How should they think about negotiating for an equity package? I think this is an incredibly valuable piece of knowledge that a lot of people don't have as they're entering the startup world. Like, how do you negotiate for an equity package versus the rest of it?
Well, I think first of all, every employee is different, right? So if an employee has a family and kids, then obviously immediate salary may be more important. Right. But in the situation you're presenting where someone wants more equity, I think every founder that hears from an employee, I'd prefer to go heavier on the equity and lighter on the salary. That should be a great thing that every founder wants to hear, because it means that they believe in the idea and they want to invest for the right reasons, their personal time. So I think if an employee wants to negotiate on that point and says that to a founder, that's a great starting point. And as long as they're being fair and reasonable,
right,
with their request, and it's easy to find that stuff out from what the general market is doing, then hopefully the founder does the same thing and is fair with that employee.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is there's a trade-off between potentially trading off equity for a larger equity component, a lower salary component, to make sure that it's a reasonable total package in incentives, and that if you go heavier on the equity, essentially you're playing a longer game. You have a lot of belief that the company is going to have a positive outcome down the road. Maybe a little bit more risk potentially, but So what's your thought about salary negotiation for someone starting off? Like,
yeah, I think first of all, I agree with everything you just said. I think that's spot on. I talk to a lot of founders, and sometimes I know that the equity conversation, both between co-founders and also between employees, can be contentious because, I mean, for obvious reasons, right?
Yes.
That's what you're there till midnight for every night, is to build the company.
Frankly, that's one of the reasons why I flamed out of my early startup. Was like we weren't able to have that conversation in a productive way, and a lot of that was on me for not knowing how to have it.
Well, it's amazing to me, having gone through it a few times. I felt that way during my first startup too, but you realize quickly that it's not worth anything anyway right now.
Right.
So let's quickly get past all these hypotheticals of how much money you're going to make in 5 years and talk about just get it done, make it fair, and move on to actually building something special.
Yeah.
So I think that's really the way to go, although I recognize that can be painful. If you can keep that in mind, that really does make sense and it's the right thing for everyone, that can guide the conversation.
Terrific. If you had any other piece of advice for either early stage company employees or founders, what would it be?
Big thing that I've been talking about a lot lately is be realistic with yourself about what your company can be worth, right? So I think that especially in the Bay Area, funding sometimes is the goal rather than the method to get to that goal.
Sure.
It becomes the goal in and of itself. And I think that a lot of great companies are failing because they're raising too much money, right? Because if you raise too much money, then you have to hit the home run. There's no other option for you.
Sure.
You need to hit a home run. Whereas if you take less funding or no funding and bootstrap it along the way, then you can have a single or double, and that feels like a home run for almost every entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it's really important to be honest with yourself about how big your market is. It's easy to create a spreadsheet for an investor that shows you creating $1 billion company or multiple $100 million company, but the reality is that those type of companies are so few and far between.
Yeah, they're essentially a handful of exits per year above the $100 million. Handful. Tiny.
But to me, there's this interesting gap in the market right now between a $1 and $20 million company, where people were more realistic about that's really where they could be, that's really where they could fit. We'd see a lot more successes rather than people raising a lot of money quickly and then spending it quickly and failing. And the thing is too, once you raise money, you're going to spend it, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you have that money in the bank account, you're going to hire quickly, and once you have that monthly run rate, you run through it really quickly, and if you can't maintain it, you can't meet the metrics, then the company's really done. It's really hard to recover from running out of money.
Sure. The website is gooverseas.com.
Gooverseas.com. We'd love to hear from anybody out there who's watching it. Join our community. Feel free to reach out to us about any questions you have.
Terrific.
Yeah.
One of the things you talked about earlier was maybe that you haven't done quite enough studying of current trends in marketing. I'm going to say thank you for participating here, and then I'm going to bring an online marketing expert to the stage, and maybe if you want to hang out in the audience, you benefit from the CreativeLIVE community as well.
Sounds great. What a great segue, Rich.
Thank you. Mitch Gordon, everybody. Big round of applause.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, sir. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.